What is up, everyone? Welcome back. Today is a video that you guys knew was going to be coming, considering how much I played through the remake and had my take and my thoughts and everything else. And here it is, my cumulative Final Fantasy VII Remake review, rant, and a little bit of some other stuff that a lot of people don't really know about that's going to happen here at the end once I give all my takes and everything like that. First off, I want to say, as the title says, this is going to feature heavy spoilers, so much so that if you have not played the 7 Remake, I really would not recommend watching this video, as I'm going to spoil pretty much everything that this game has to offer and then some. So, if you were looking to go ahead and get into the remake and you don't really know, if you're looking for spoilers or what, what's this, what's that, I would first off recommend saying that I recommend playing the original before I do the remake, but that's just my personal take. Some people will go ahead and argue differently. With that said, though, if you are looking any bit towards the remake, I would really recommend not watching this, as I'm going to spoil the entire game. With that little bit out of the way, I want to go ahead and say the Final Fantasy VII Remake was my most anticipated game of all time, and it honestly felt like I was waiting for it my entire life, and I really do mean that. It's been probably about a decade to 11 years when I first picked up the game, and ever since I first got my copy of my PS1 and Final Fantasy VII, I wanted to know what it would be like to go ahead and upscale these graphics and put that little bit of what I viewed the world of Gaia in my mind into a modern day, something that looked like Advent Children, something that would sit on the PS Triple when it came out. And so when it did come out and it was announced in 2015, I was the most ecstatic I'd ever been in my entire life, and I used to go ahead and search the internet, like I'm talking 360, no scope, deep web, artifact searching, mathematician, supercomputer nonsense. I was trying to find every bit of information on the 7 Remake that I could, and that kept up for 4 years until they started, releasing more and more stuff in 2019, into the subsequent release in 2020. So like I said, this game just meant so much. And with that said, the original Final Fantasy VII is a top 3 game of all time for me. It was really my first introduction into JRPGs on the whole, and like so many others, I'm not the only one who sat through this. I've been asking for a remake for my childhood for countless years, but that's not what we got. And like I said, what I'm going to say today is definitely not going to sit well with quite a few people, but I'm just going to go ahead and give my personal take on the whole thing. What instead we got from what I wanted so much in my childhood was really nowhere near what the fans of the original had asked for. And for example, my biggest gripe with the game is that scenes are incredibly out of place, and some impactful ones like the Shinra Massacre are just downright removed. Add any of the emotional weight of character deaths, it's just completely exacerbated by the ghosts, which, by the way, completely ruined the whole entire bit of the game. I just want to go ahead and say, it's something out of Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. They work as like a functioning Dragon Ball, and towards the end they literally start reviving characters. You can't even make that up. When I started going and seeing these ghosts at the first, I went to the orchestra and I saw them when their first trailer that they released with the launch date trailer. And I thought, that's a little weird, that's a little out of place, but I could kind of trust the directory somewhat. I know Nomura and Nojima recently, like with Final Fantasy X 2.5, Will, and Kingdom Hearts 3, their games and stories have just been a hodgepodge mess. And I still wanted to have it. I still had that cautious optimism. And unfortunately, that cautious optimism definitely stabbed me in the back. I don't understand what the whole point behind the Whispers of Fate were. They get very Kingdom Heartsy, and it just gets to a mess, especially in that final hour, you guys. The final hour, chapter 18, late 17 to 18, is just atrocious. Another thing that I'd like to add on top of that is, if you haven't read any of the books, seen Advent Children, or played Crisis Core and or Before Crisis, most of the final part of the game will just not make sense. A lot of people that I know were asking for this to be their first real pull into the Final Fantasy VII universe, thinking it was like some sort of updated and upgraded original, kind of like how it was honestly marketed, but that just wasn't the case with this game. I don't want to go ahead and delve too much into spoiler territory, first off because I want you guys to experience this for yourself, and second off, you guys are going to think I'm writing a fan fiction. I'm going to go ahead and try and get the best synopsis that I can of the final hour. This game is actually in an alternate timeline sequel to the original events after Advent Children. As weird as that sounds, it gets a little weirder. When you get to the final boss, who looks like the front cover of Shadowbringers is like an amalgamation mixed with Casper the Ghost, You find out after a vision that gets sent to Red 13, who's not playable, by the way, which also feels kind of odd considering how much he really is pushed into the ending. You find out that the original Final Fantasy VII, right, the game that all of us have spent so many countless hours on exploring the world of Gaia, saving the planet from Meteor, the game that personally even taught me the importance of death and life being finite, you find out that that's actually the bad ending. Like I said, I'm going to spoil a lot, but that sat so terribly with me, you guys. I wish I could go ahead and give there's nothing that I could even accumulate it to. There's no comparison. The original game ending is bad now? What's going on? I really wish I was making this up, but it's 100% true. And why that may just be my critiques for the story, I want to go ahead and note something that a lot of people aren't talking about. The idea of the expansion of this game is very, very falsely advertised. Besides going to the upper plate of Sector 7 to walk to Jessie's house and meet her parents, there are no new explorable areas from the original. There's no Sector 1 Undercity or Upper Plate. There's no Sector 2, well, I guess kind of, Sector 1 bombing, but you don't get to see the Upper Plate. You don't get to see Sector 2, you don't get to see Sector 3. And, maybe that raises some questions. I beat Midgar in 4 to 6 hours in the original, but most people are saying that the Final Fantasy VII Remake is a 35-hour experience. What you're saying doesn't add up. The reason as to why this game is 35 hours and not 4 to 6 hours is because they just add so much time to go to point A to point B. Remember the collapsed highway, the one where all of us got stuck at because of the weird pole graphic thing? That's maybe a 5-minute walk, including the fight with the Hell House? That's a now 1.5 to 2 hour long use robot mini game. It adds nothing to the plot. The characters kind of really don't interact except just, the little bit of banter and whatnot. But there's no reason to add it. It's just tedious. And towards the end of the game as well, the gameplay becomes super, super ridiculous. Enemies really start soaking up a lot of damage beyond belief, I want to point out, or even staggering doesn't really work. And while I may go ahead and critique the gameplay towards the end, I had a lot of fun with the combat. There was a few times when I had to fight Leviathan or I had to fight like 20 enemies in a room. I was like, this is kind of ridiculous. But honestly, I really like the combat. And I can't really compare it to a game. Like, it has the ATB and it has the, real-time and ATB, which is just, it's awesome. It's a really, really good mixture. And if they definitely critique it a little bit, I could see it being a very ideal battle system for even future installments. I wouldn't even be upset if they honestly had Final Fantasy 16 take some of the things from the battle system. I really enjoyed it. And, I kind of give that its positives, and I've really only given critiques to this whole rant so far, but I do admit that this game has some heavy positives. For the most part, the textures and graphics are something that look better than Advent Children, and I do mean that. There are many textures in which are just atrocious, and they really look like they are pulled from the original. In my stream, I kind of commented on it. Towards the end, the sky, it literally looks like it was pulled from the original, leaving Midgar. And the characters comment on it when you start going up to Shinra HQ, and it's just like, oh, okay, I can't really tell where this is from, because the upper or the lower city looks so bad when you're in the upper city. It looks like a wall, like something out of a PS1 game. But I will say they were definitely stunning for the most part. And I've been stating on it a little bit. The gameplay was fun. It did have its weird parts from time to time, but I would say like 85 to 90%, the majority was definitely positive. By the way, the materia system is kept pretty much intact from the original, and being able to use and level up all sorts of materia, including the new ones, was very rewarding, and it was a lot of fun. The AP grind gets a little like, whatever. You get like an AP up materia later on that kind of supersedes everything. You get like triple the AP or something like that. But besides that, you guys, I really, really enjoyed the materia system, and it's what made the game so much fun. It's very customizable, I also want to talk about the music too, though. Speaking of positives, you guys, the soundtrack in this game is just spectacular. I mean, this is maybe a top 5 soundtrack I have ever heard in a video game ever. So the music is dynamic. Trying to think like Red Dead Redemption 2 had it. Songs would start slow, a battle starts, and then the music, speeds up from where you're at. And certain themes you'll remember and be like, oh man, and maybe you'll even get a little emotional. I know I did for the song that's playing in the background. When I heard A Head on Our Way for the first time remade, I absolutely lost my mind. It was amazing, it's spectacular, and it's still one of my favorite songs in this game that holds up. The music of this game is superb, if really anything else. This game's, the music is just incredible. With that said, however, with the negatives and everything like that, this game does just assassinate Final Fantasy VII in a fire that is so bright, the Nibelheim incident looks tame. There are character assassinations like no tomorrow, plot changes that just make no sense, and confusion and agony that I felt so abundant in the final hour, it just tortured me as a fan of the original, and I can see a lot of fans of the original feeling the same exact way. If I could go ahead and give an analogy, it's like if Final Fantasy VII is my most treasured artwork and I have it in my house, I have just been tied to a chair and watched as people have come into my house and completely destroyed my most famous piece. This game, in the word remake, I guess if you could even call it that, like I said, it's just been riddled with false advertisement, and that's what my biggest issue has been. It's even the reason I sold my shares in Square Enix after. I just felt disgusted. If you go ahead and market something as a remake that fans have been asking for so long, and I understand, like, oh, but you know, they don't want a one-for-one remake. At the end of the day, you don't want a lot of the story elements changed, you know? What you loved so much about the original was because it was so awesome in 1997, and it still holds up to this day. You don't want to have the change from life is finite, life is precious, to we're going to defy fate and destiny like it's Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance 2. You don't want that. You want to have the original themes. And with what we have so far, especially with all this time travel nonsense, you guys, it's definitely fallen apart. And we are having themes that you wouldn't even imagine. The most depressing factor is, after all of this whole experience, we will most likely never see the remake that so many of us have been asking for since the fateful PS3 tech demo. And that's honestly what hurts the most. If anything, if I could go ahead and give this game a review, I really hope that the Time Jannies / Change Bad Ghosts can come in and save this mess for future installments. Because as it's going right now, it's going to take time travel to save the mess that we're at. I wanted to go ahead and give this game a review, like an actual number, and if I had to do so, it'd probably be a 5.7 to 6 out of 10. There's so many inexcusable things that happen later on with gameplay and story changes, and the writing gets so predictable that it's just, oh god, it's bad. It's really, really bad. It's like a 13-year-old fan fiction. And it's just, so you may be asking why didn't I rate the game lower. The music and the gameplay itself is a lot of fun. And that's, at least I have to give a 5.7, at the very least. And that's probably where I'm going to go ahead and put the margin. I really, really was excited for this game, and it assassinated pretty much all of my hopes and dreams for future installments, which was just very, very heartbreaking. And I think that's where the biggest worry lies in now, is with this whole time travel nonsense. We really, really have to worry about the future installments, you guys. Because it is not going to be Final Fantasy VII anymore, and even emotional deaths and stuff like that are just being revoked. I don't think any single person actually died in this game, and I do mean that. I think every single person survived the ending. And there's just so much inconsistency and stuff that happens in the end that I couldn't rate it any lower, or any higher than that. And I can't rate it any lower just because the music and gameplay do hold up. Now, with that said, I promised you guys at the end of the review I was going to go ahead and talk about something that pretty much no one knows about because it's a very touchy subject, and I guess maybe there might just be an issue behind it. What I want to go ahead and talk about is my biggest fear with this current game. As I said, I'm really worried about the future installments for the sake of, you know, this whole time travel nonsense, alternate timelines, and character assassinations. But there's something else that people have missed entirely. So I want to go ahead and talk about that. And what this is going to actually have to deal with, the most secretive thing of all, the jukeboxes and the music discs. So in Final Fantasy VII Remake, there's jukeboxes that are scattered all around. You can find them in Wall Market, you can find them in 7th Heaven, you can find them all over. And inside you'll catch some catchy tunes and remakes of some of the most beloved songs from Final Fantasy VII. Important part. And while these songs are really cool, they have some like the Crazy Motorcycle Chase jazz beat, Tifa's remix, dance techno theme, Aerith's theme, clubbing, like all this kind of stuff. It's awesome to hear, and you don't really get to spend too much time in jukeboxes, but it's cool when you walk by and you're like, is this Those Who Fight Further in a remix, a jazz remix? What I want to go ahead and note is that there is no music from other Final Fantasy games. And this is where the troublesome issue starts. I have a really good friend who's as much into Final Fantasy VII as I am, and he's very, very well versed in computers, scripting, encrypting, decrypting, list goes on. When the demo came out and the demo files leaked, he was one of the first people to go ahead and get them, and he sent me a mega file one day and just said, hey, I know how much you love the music of this game, go ahead and take a look. And he sent me the mega file, and I was able to go ahead and get some of the soundtrack early. As a result of which, I've actually kept all the files from that I've had, because first off, I love the music of this game, like I said, and having all that stuff is really, really accessible, even though I'm going to go buy the soundtrack again when it does officially release. What I want to go ahead and talk about is the fact that there is a jukebox section in the original leaked copy of the game, or the leaked demo files of the game. Inside of this, though, aren't just Final Fantasy VII songs, and that's where my questions begin. So I have a few examples today. Like I said, I still have these up. So for example, Final Fantasy VI fans will note immediately that is Kefka's theme. It's just a little bit more uptune, you know. And then also, we got... Go ahead and fast forward a little bit. We have a more electronic, like almost like a Synthesia type Eternal Wind. For those of you guys that 100% of this game, and by the way, there's more. Xanderkin, Runflower, Protecting Your Devotion, Melodies of Life, Eyes on Me, list goes on. For those of you guys that have finished this game, you guys would know none of these actually appeared in the game. There's 31 music discs, and all of which are only Final Fantasy VII songs. So, I want to go ahead and talk about what I think my 3 theories are. With Theory 3 being the most least likely, and Theory 1 being the most likely, I'm going to go ahead and go from bottom to top. So, Theory 3, there's only really 3 things as to why they would have these in the original files of the game, and then they're not in the final release. Theory 3, they were cut from the game. Now, this is definitely going to be the most least likely theory, and the reason why I say that is because they're so masterfully done. There's a Final Fantasy 1 Battle remix that just absolutely knocks your socks off. It's so spectacular. And the way that they go ahead and remix those to make it sound like a music disc, like something you would actually hear in a jukebox, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into that supersedes the amount that someone would actually go ahead and do just for the sake of cutting it from the end product. And I doubt that that was what they did in their final month of delay, just cutting out jukebox songs. Theory 2 is, and this one's a little tough too. None of these theories are good. Theory 2 is these are actually going to be part 2, and they were getting all the remix for the old game soundtrack, so for when part 2 comes out, they can go ahead and just plug all the music files in and do the same exact disc thing, but with more songs from different Final Fantasy games. The reason why this theory is tough is because you would want to go ahead and, like I said, I think this is going to be a trilogy. You want to go ahead and maybe even think it'd be something like the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy, which, even though it was pretty atrocious, they at least listened to their fans, and they changed things after the end. Gameplay elements, a little bit of the story elements, and so on. If they're already going ahead and getting all the jukebox music and the side quests for the jukeboxes, or the jukebox discs, you really have to wonder how far along they are in part 2. And that's what the scary part is. If they're already almost done, which is what they would go ahead and put that music in, it means that we are going to see absolutely no direction change. And for us fans of the original that are so just heartbroken, diminished, and just straight black-pilled by the ending, that means we're not going to go ahead and see any changes from part 1 to part 2. And that is truly disgusting. Finally, the first theory, which, like I said, I don't even know. All these theories are bad. The first theory is, and this is probably the most likely, there's going to be DLC. And there's going to be either like a classic music and skins pack, maybe, like they'll add the original outfits from Final Fantasy VII included with the music. And it would also make sense as to why Cloud, Barrett, Tifa, and Aerith are all missing a weapon slot. Even if you collect all the weapons, they're still missing one. And that means that they're going to be having paid DLC to a game that is already episodic. Now, that is truly, truly upsetting and really makes this into not a remake experience, but a cash grab experience. And that is what the scary part lies. So anyways, I can go ahead and delve into that further as more information comes out on the jukebox thing. But like I said, no one's really talking about it, and I'm not seeing anything talk about it at all because a lot of people don't have the original files because they themselves don't know how to decrypt and do all that. I don't even know, like I said. If I didn't have my friend, I'd be screwed, and that didn't matter. So if you guys have any questions, please go ahead and just, comment, DM me, I don't know. Just, I want to go ahead and figure this out because this jukebox issue of music that is cut is one of the most prevalent issues that I've seen, and at the same time, it's not really being addressed at all. And if there is DLC, that just goes ahead and shows that this really, really is not at all what the original fans were asking for. So this has been my first review of a game. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I wish it could have ended on a more positive note rather than me just going ahead and slapping a 5.7 to a game that I have been so excited for the past 5 years officially, in the past 10 to 11, and just mentally being prepared. But at the same time, these reviews have to get done so that changes can be made. And that's exactly what we're here to go ahead and strive for. With that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Ask me if you have any questions, anything like that. I would feel free to answer them. Thank you all. See you soon. Have a nice night.